Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Marie and this is
Krista.
Yep, and we're counseling therapists with Iris Community Counseling, and we are offering you this second part of a two-part workshop. So the first one was on resiliency in children and youth, and today we'll be talking about growth mindset, how to foster a growth mindset in children and youth as well. So we're doing this in partnership with the Canadian Mental Health Association of New Brunswick. So thank you so much for the invitation to host this webinar, and welcome everybody. Let's get started. So to get started, we truly have to do a territorial acknowledgement. So let's just acknowledge that today we gather on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people who shared their land with settlers in peace. Peace and friendship treaties with the Mi'kmaq continue to bind us together today as we strive for reconciliation. And in our work together today and moving forward, we continue to honor that original promise of ongoing respect, peace, and friendship. So as we get started, I'm not sure which chaos you've come to that has led you here to this webinar today, but it's always challenging for me to go from parenting 3 kids and 2 dogs and my husband and all of this wackiness with partnerships and the busyness of my regular lifestyle. So it's tough to settle automatically. I can't just snap into a webinar mode. So we thought maybe we would do a transition kind of calming activity, rewire our brains a little bit so that we're ready to kind of focus and ground and share this time together. So this is a cheesy but lovely little activity that helps you kind of ground and practice gratitude. It's called making love lists. So it's really, really simple. You're getting your brain out of the fuzz of whatever situation you've come to, and you're rewiring your brain to be more present now, and you're doing it in a positive way because you're thinking of things that you love. So here are a couple little examples of something you can do. Try these with anyone around you with different things you love. There's no limit to what you can come up with, but so a simple one would be like, try to name 10 ice cream flavors that you love. So let's lead it with bubble gum. We'll go straight into mint chip. I don't know, Krista, do you have any favorites?
Anything peanut butter.
Oh, good choice, right?
Yeah.
Even just the kind of lovely repetitive nature of making a list is really delightful and calming. You could do 10 cool animals like stingrays and koalas and da 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 da. You could do 10 people whom you love. I like that one. And here's a cheesy but fantastic one, 10 reasons that you rock. Okay? So I hope you've had a minute to pick one of those. We'll give you a second and to go through 10 things in your love list.
Mine would be wolves and sharks for the animals.
Mm-hmm.
People I love would be family and Marilyn Monroe. And reasons I rock, that's a tough one. Reasons I rock. I care. That's a good reason to rock.
Mm-hmm.
I care about animals. I care about people.
Krista, that's lovely. That could be one, 10 things or 10 people you care about, right?
Yeah.
That's a good love list. Okay, so let's go. I think that I don't know if you've had luck with it, but I'm feeling more grounded in this webinar right now. So are you ready, Krista?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so as I shared, this is the second part of a 2-part workshop. Today we're going to focus on growth mindset for children and youth. If you didn't see our first one about resiliency, it might be worth taking a peek at that one too, because they're really nicely tied together, and a lot of what we'll talk about today really connects nicely to what we covered in our resiliency one. So yeah, well, you're more than welcome to check out both. And thanks again to the Canadian Mental Health Association of New Brunswick for inviting us and welcoming us to make these workshops with you.
Yes, thank you.
So who are we? Whoa, it's like existential. Maybe I don't feel so grounded after all. But here we are. Iris Community Counseling. So Krista and I are educators, and we're also school counselors. And we're also counseling therapists. And like you, we also wear tons of other hats too. We all have many, many roles. But those are the 3 roles that kind of bring us here today. So Krista and I met many, many years ago. We were trying to remember, we're guessing it's close to 15 years ago. When we taught side by side in a middle school, which was really lovely. It was my first official teaching position in Brunswick. And Krista was there to kind of guide me. So she got lots of complaints and celebrations all day long. So thanks again, Krista. We both taught together for a really long time and then realized, oh my goodness, we weren't even focusing on the curriculum at a certain point. Let's be honest, we were starting to focus more on the well-being and the mental health and the relationships that we had with the students in our classrooms and in our hallways. And so we both kind of had to reflect and kind of had a little reckoning and awakening that made us realize we had to become counselors. So we went back to school, and then after that, our roles switched. We became school counselors. We both live in the Sackville area, in the Tantramar area, which is our home community, and we love it here. But you're only limited basically to one counselor per school. So we both drive every day. We commute to the Moncton area, which is great. We love the work that we do in our schools there too. But our hearts have always remained in Sackville. This is the community that I grew up in, that I have my babies in, where my family lives, my friends live. This is, for me, very much home based. And so Krista's had a similar experience. She's raised her kids here. She and her partner live here. This is it for us. So our hearts as counselors really wanted to support and hold up and participate in like the mental health and the mental wellness of our home community too. So we started up Iris Community Counseling like over 2 years ago now. Yeah. We've been really busy. So we initially started working with children and youth, and then it's just kind of grown. And we've made really great partnerships with community organizations and other people who are involved in mental health within our area, and it's been awesome, and it continues to be awesome. So
yeah, and it was a way too for us to give back to the community, you know, that helped raise our children, right, to be who they are today. So this was our sort of thanks, I guess, if you will, for doing that.
So true. And the name, we should share that too, Iris Community Counseling. So the Iris is, well, we live in Sackville, which is located in the Tantramar Marsh. So we live basically in a wetland, which is kind of rugged and kind of barren and kind of awesome for that. But in that rugged, barren, kind of brown and green landscape, all of a sudden in the spring, you get these gorgeous flowers. They're popping up really soon, actually. Gorgeous wild irises. They're bright purple. They're fantastic, and they just burst out of the landscape. And so we really thought that was a great name because it grounded us to this region, to this area, to this community. And it also is a lovely kind of symbol for what can happen when you foster and encourage mental health. So from that kind of rugged landscape, kind of true beauty can really grow given the right support. So we thought that was a fitting name. So yeah, that's us. Anything else, Krista?
No, you nailed it.
Okay, done. Okay, so today we're going to talk about growth mindset. So let's do that. But before we do that, we should really kind of explain what is a mindset in the first place. So what does it mean to have a mindset? So a mindset is a mental inclination or disposition or frame of mind. Your mindset is your collection of thoughts and beliefs that shape your habits. And your habits affect how you think, what you feel, what you do, who you are, and how you view the world, and then also your connection to it. So mindset really relates, therefore, to the deep connection between your attitude and your belief system. The mindset is really kind of like your worldview, how you interpret things, how you interact with everything around you, how you make narratives out of your experiences in life. Simple? No. Huge. But that is generally what a mindset is. Okay. So today we want to talk about a growth mindset. So when we're talking mindsets, there's lots of talk about growth mindset. It's like a hot term right now. It's all over anytime you talk about mental health, it seems to pop up. So we really wanted to take some time with you today to really dig in and figure out what a growth mindset is. What does that even mean? So when you're thinking of mindsets, there's sort of two types, and it's often thought of, there's sort of like a binary that they're at opposite ends. So there's two types of mindsets, one being a set or a fixed mindset, and then the other one being a growth mindset. So the one that we really want to focus on and emphasize and kind of encourage today is the growth mindset. But we also want to acknowledge that there's also like a blended or mixed mindset, which is when you kind of have elements of both and you waver back and forth between both. And really, that's probably what most of us do. And the importance is that we're always still working towards having a growth mindset instead of staying rigid and fixed. Okay, so there is that fluidity between all three, but today we really want to focus on supporting growth mindset. So there are key differences between fixed and growth mindset. So the first one would be effort, challenges, and then mistakes and feedback. Did you want to share about this one?
Yeah, so, and I just want to make a note too that as we learn about these three different mindsets, this fixed and set, this growth, and then what does it mean by a mixed mindset, If you catch yourself after listening to the webinar and you find yourself, geez, I really have a set or fixed mindset, I'm really rigid in my way of thinking, then perhaps a growth mindset might feel a little too overwhelming to take on. And so having that mix, like Marie mentioned, so just it's like almost like a slow transition into growing that growth mindset, if you will, right? So thinking of it as baby steps, I guess, when overcoming fear or phobia, you wouldn't just go full blown and full tilt into it. You would take baby steps to acknowledge and challenge yourself along the way. But the key differences between, say, when we're talking about fixed and set and growth are three things. The effort in which you put towards a growth mindset, you're more open to putting in that effort and even hard work, if you will, when you have a growth mindset. And you'll see the different ways of perception too, like how a person views a situation when they have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And challenges is something in a fixed mindset. Challenges are a real barrier. It's when we hit that wall of challenge, that's when a lot of people with fixed mindsets or set mindsets tend to say, nope, I'm not going to do it. And they don't. They avoid the situation or not complete the task or whatever the challenge may be. Whereas a growth mindset, because, and we'll talk more about this, they acknowledge and accept that it's okay to make mistakes, and they're almost like an expectation that I will make mistakes, especially when I'm learning something new. That's when challenges all of a sudden become opportunities in a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Mistakes and feedback, as I mentioned, with a fixed mindset or a set mindset, you can use the words interchangeably. I find that when someone has a fixed or a set mindset, they aren't willing to make mistakes, and therefore that's why they won't take the challenges. But also the feedback, when it's coming, when constructive criticism is coming from people who care about you, and you know that their intent is well, with a fixed mindset, someone is not likely to perceive that information very well. They're not able to take it in and really learn from and listen to what is being said, knowing that the intent is good behind the words that are shared or the information that's shared. Whereas with a growth mindset, you know, people tend to be more open to receiving that feedback. Yeah.
Thanks, Krista. Great explanation. So we thought we'd pop up some visuals kind of comparing a fixed and a growth mindset. And through that, you'll probably be able to sort of envision what that blended or mixed mindset might be as you try to launch from fixed to growth. So Krista, why don't I read the fixed mindset piece, and then you can read the opposite growth mindset. Is that okay?
Sure. Yep.
So if you are kind of stuck within a fixed mindset momentarily, then you're typically likely to avoid challenges because you'd see them as barriers or reasons to fail, right? So you would avoid them.
And as I said, when you have a growth mindset, you tend to see some challenges as opportunities to grow from or to learn from.
Okay, so within a fixed mindset, then you might shy away from things that you don't know. So anything that you're not instantly comfortable or familiar with, you would see as like an other, right? Don't go there. It's unsafe. I'm unsure. I don't feel confident there. So nope, not going to do that.
Yeah, which really limits yourself, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a growth mindset or practice having a growth mindset, you're more willing to acknowledge and embrace not only your strengths, but your weaknesses as well. And I mean that when I say embrace as well, like embrace that we're not perfect, embrace that we all have areas where we're very strong in some, and that we also have some areas that we need improvement upon, or that just aren't our forte, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. So as Krista mentioned earlier, sometimes criticism or feedback can be a barrier if you are struggling with a fixed mindset. So you're unable to handle criticism or feedback in a positive way.
Yep, and with the
see it as an insult. Yeah. Sorry.
What's that?
I was just saying you would see feedback as an insult, right, or a reason to stop.
Exactly. Yeah, you'd be hypersensitive to things that are being said and taking it personally, right? Mm-hmm. And so not only would you be, with a growth mindset, be more willing to receive feedback and positive constructive criticism, but you'd also be willing to give it as well, because you'll be feeling more confident, right? That somebody won't take it personally or take it the wrong way. You'll feel more confident that what you're offering or sharing for information or guidance is definitely shared with care and concern and good intent.
So another piece of having a fixed mindset is that idea that if you have a fixed mindset, you sort of typically have that belief that you're born with innate intelligence and innate talent, and that that's static and unchanging. So after you're born, there's not really much you can do to grow or develop or change or strengthen. You're just kind of stuck with what you were given.
Yeah, that sounds really limiting as well. That's a message I'm getting with the fixed mindset. It really limits you. It limits your ability, your willingness. It sounds like it limits, you getting to know you and you growing as a person, because I think I mentioned in the first webinar that we did that as you grow, your passions can potentially change, your interests, your hobbies, but if you don't give yourself a chance to get to know you, then you'll always be stuck in that way of thinking, and it will limit everything in your life. And so when you have a growth mindset and you work towards practicing having one, all of a sudden intelligence and talent, it's dynamic, it's ever improving. There are no limits. You're always open to learning new tasks, and it gives you a lot more permission, I find.
Yeah, permission is a lovely word to use there for sure. Another piece, and I want to point this out too, like as we're sharing this, if you are hearing ideas and they're resonating with you and you're wondering, oh, maybe I do have a fixed mindset, that's okay, right? Yes. We've all been there. We all at times display and honor and live within a fixed mindset. It's just to kind of just stir things up and wonder and put yourself kind of beyond the comfort zone, because it is comfortable to have a fixed mindset, right? It's nice to be stagnant and comfortable in that space, but it's just to encourage you to wonder, oh, maybe I could look at things in a different way. Maybe I could shift that mindset to a growth one instead. So,
and sorry, Anne Marie, I just want to mention too, sometimes when we know better, we do better, right? Yep. So it's that acknowledgement piece as well. It makes a difference. You may not even have realized, like, oh, I didn't know that me not being able to handle feedback or criticism, or me shying away from what I considered would be failures or challenges, was part of a fixed mindset. So being aware of it and knowing that, all of a sudden then you make strides to attempting to do better, which is a mixed mindset, working towards a mixed mindset or a growth mindset.
Exactly. Okay, so another piece of a fixed mindset would be that maybe you don't carry out any actions unless you have approval first. So if you have a fixed mindset, you're sort of hyper aware of others around you and their perceptions of you and what they think about you. You're sort of always putting your feelers out to make sure that people are comfortable with any new decisions you make, any new adventures that you take on. That is a really kind of isolating in some ways to live. You need to grow and experience new things to grow and change and develop. And so if you're always seeking approval, you're never really putting yourself out there to gain your own approval, right? So just be cautious if you tend to have if you fall into that pattern of looking for others and their approval before you take an action, maybe next time switch it up and maybe let yourself lead the way. Be your own advocate, be autonomous in your own adventure.
Yep. And with a growth mindset, working towards having a growth mindset, prioritizing learning over that seeking of approval. Again, I use that word permission, but it gives you permission to make mistakes and make errors, because that's what part of the process of learning is about, is to learn from those mistakes or errors, right?
Mm-hmm. Another piece too with growth mindset and fixed mindset. So typically if you're in a fixed mindset, sometimes you fall into patterns where you're always trying to prove yourself, right? So you're always looking for success. You're looking to prove yourself right. And that's absolutely exhausting. And right, I'm not sure that should be the goal to things, to just prove ourselves right and prove ourselves successful. If you flip it to a growth mindset, Krista can tell you maybe the alternative to that.
Yeah, it's about enjoying the process and not just the end result. So you want to enjoy the ride, if you will, right? The journey.
Yeah. And on that too, another piece of a fixed mindset when we're thinking about success and proving ourselves is that sometimes we, even if we're not aware of it, if we have a truly fixed mindset, we might feel a little bit threatened by those around us who show success, right? So we're always sort of comparing ourselves to them and then if you're always comparing yourself to others around you, there's always somebody else who's going to be doing better, right? That's just human nature. And so you never kind of rise to your perception of success if you're always comparing yourself. We are all on a different sort of path that way, and we all have different struggles and different ways to adapt. And so it's just an unfair criteria to always compare yourself to the success of others.
That's a good point.
So if you look to the growth mindset, Krista could share with you a little bit about being inspired instead by other success.
Yeah, so when you're fixed, you're threatened by the success of others. That could show up in jealousy or other emotions. And when you're practicing a growth mindset, instead of seeing it as that want for what others have, you're inspired by it instead.
Mm-hmm. And willing to celebrate and acknowledge, maybe I'm not there yet, but awesome that you are, right? Okay, so another piece would be that effort is not regarded fruitful. So if you have a fixed mindset and you do put yourself out there, you do put some effort in, you have this sort of concept that you never are quite reaching the success level that you want to. There's always another step. There's always another way to prove yourself. And what an exhausting task that is if you're never reflecting and celebrating as you go.
Mm-hmm. And another way to perceive growth mindset is to think of learning, for example, instead of a daunting task, see it as training your brain, you know, that these are skills you're not going to learn or unlearn once you have learned them. These are things that you'll continue to, you know, hone, if you will, as you get older and grow up and try new things.
Mm-hmm. Another piece too with fixed mindset is that idea that understanding failure as the limit of ability. So if you try plan A and it doesn't work, right, and that could be any version of plan A, right, then you're saying to yourself, I'm failing.
Mm-hmm.
But you haven't allowed yourself that freedom to try plan B or plan C or plan D or plan, I mean, it could take you to plan Z. And in the end, it could take you off that plan entirely to a whole other direction. But if you get stuck at each barrier and acknowledge each barrier as failure, then you're not going to be able to kind of become the true, better version of yourself that we're all kind of innately trying to be, striving to be.
Yeah. And if you think of the word fail, F-A-I-L, I mean, you could think of those letters as standing for first attempt in learning. Mm-hmm. So understanding failure as that opportunity to grow, right?
Mm-hmm. Cool. So it's not hard to imagine why, if you consider all the things that I've shared with you about the fixed mindset, it's not really hard to imagine why it would be easy to give up, right? So if you have all these sort of barriers standing in your way from being adventurous, from taking risks, from learning more about yourself, from putting yourself out there with yourself comfortably and with others comfortably, then it is not at all hard to see why somebody with a fixed mindset might typically give up easy.
Yeah, and I find growth, like having a growth mindset really ties in nicely with the resiliency webinar that we did, because being resilient is all about, you know, well, I loosely use the term bouncing back because we kind of talked about in what does that mean, right? But that idea that with a growth mindset, we persist, you know, when faced with challenges, right? Mm-hmm. Or setbacks. And look how pretty your brain looks when you practice growth mindset. Look at all the colors.
And look at that ugly fixed mindset, Krista.
A stained glass look. I love it.
All right, so then here would be some kind of typical thought patterns that you might see. So within a fixed mindset, you might hear yourself thinking or see it within others that failure is an opportunity. Wait, I'm on the wrong one. Fixed mindset, you might hear things like failure is the limit of my abilities, yes, or that I'm either good at it or I'm not. So that's that idea that we're born with what we have and that's it. My abilities are unchanging. I can either do it or I can't. I don't like to be challenged. My potential is predetermined. Oh, that hurts. When I'm frustrated, I give up. Feedback and criticism are personal, and I stick to what I know. And so, like, I'm going to be very honest. Those are all thoughts that I've had about myself at different times. We all do. We all struggle with having a constant growth mindset, right? Life is challenging. We are given challenges. They are challenging. It's in the name itself, right? So as long as we are aware, though, of our own kind of thought patterns that lead us towards having a growth mindset, and then the thought patterns that we can put in place to support a growth mindset, and that's kind of where like the true messy beauty lies. Do you want to read the growth mindset ones, Krista?
Yeah, and the growth mindset, I like that the perception of it is to see words like failure, challenges, feedback as not necessarily negative things. Failure is opportunity all of a sudden, you know. Challenges become, you know, permission to make mistakes, and that's okay. Feedback all of a sudden is viewed as being constructive. So those are really important ways. You talk about brain training, those are important, how powerful those sorts of thoughts can be, right? To retrain our brain to see that as failure is opportunity, what? Or I can learn to do anything I want, right? And the reason why you can learn to do anything you want is because you are allowing, when you say that you are allowing yourself to realize that I am going to make mistakes, because that's part of the process of learning, and that's okay. And you know, I like to try new things, for example. We're going to focus here soon enough on the word yet and how powerful that little word is. So
yeah, it's about just generally being able to reframe negative experiences in a positive way, right? So
definitely.
reframing those challenges as Krista said, opportunities. So and reframing is like a counseling strategy, and it really is just the idea of shifting the frame in another way, so you view the idea and the image from a different lens. And so sometimes we really get stuck in the negativity of a moment or an experience, but if we're able to reframe it from a different perspective, we can see the perks and positives and silver lining. And that is kind of growth mindset at its very essence.
Mm-hmm.
So then, yeah, so we're doing this and we're talking about children and youth, and why are we doing that? So what's the importance? Why are we focusing on children and youth? So why are these two educator counselors really talking about growth mindset when speaking specifically to kids? So childhood provides an opportunity to build a strong framework of experience, perspective, and support that cooperatively form resiliency. The sooner in life that you're able to practice resiliency, the longer reaching its impact will have on your overall life and your ability to cope with adversity. So resiliency and growth mindset are tied so nicely. So if you haven't had a chance to check out our first webinar, you really should. And you'll see how nicely they overlap and support one another. So the earlier we can talk growth mindset with anyone, so if you're just starting today and you're 99, great timing, right? Like whenever you can, the earlier the better. It's awesome because it can really change the trajectory of how you let yourself be vulnerable and how you let yourself support yourself and how you get to be your own cheerleader for the rest of your life.
Did you say if you're 99?
Yeah, whenever. Like really, like it's growth mindset is a lifelong challenge, the same way that resiliency is. So if you can grab somebody who's really young and focus on growth mindset, that's great. But the joy of being human is that all lifelong we can focus on that.
Lifelong learners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so here's the magic word, yet.
I love it.
Yet is how you pivot, how you reframe a negative experience into like a potentially positive one, right? This is where you get to plan B. So the power of yet. So sometimes you'll hear things like, I can't do this. Oh, it's so tough, I can't do this. But if you throw yet in, it leaves opportunity for growth, right? It leaves open possibility. I'm not good at this yet. So if you keep practicing, if you ask for help, there are ways to be good at it. Maybe you're trying it the wrong way. I don't understand this. And sometimes we shut down right there. But if we practice throwing in a yet, then it leaves the opportunity that maybe at some point we will understand it. It doesn't work yet, right? So what could you do to make it work? How could you reframe that it doesn't work? And then this doesn't make sense. And I know, like working in the school system, I hear these almost daily. You know, this new math concept doesn't make sense to me. My friend's being mean to me. Why are they being so grumpy? This doesn't make sense yet. Okay, but if you flip the perspective, if you ask for help, if you allow yourself to be vulnerable and don't shut down, then you can really pivot from that yet.
Isn't that so cool? I love it. I love that it opens up so much opportunity and possibilities where before we might have caught ourselves having those thoughts, and then that's it. You're stuck with that thought, and what do you do about it? Nothing, or avoid, or, you know, whatever. So this really opens up with a positive twist, I find.
For sure. And the thing too is with the fixed mindset, so if we get stuck in that negative and we don't throw the yet in, the next time a similar situation happens, well, we already know how that's going to play out, right? We're already comfortable in that negative thought pattern. So we don't even allow the yet in, right? So you can train, as Krista and I have talked about, you can train your brain to just naturally throw in the yes. You can just sprinkle yes all over your life experience. It's really empowering. So here are some examples that we came up with. Krista and I are both like short-haired beauties struggling with COVID hair growth. So I can't handle my COVID hair growth yet. So I was really struggling with short hair, but then I actually got my husband to do like a little shave and I'm feeling good. I can do something for an actual like haircut. That's exciting. So can you handle your hair growth now?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't Monday yet, so every time a Monday comes around, it can feel overwhelming, but you know, if you give yourself that extra solid coffee, if you say hi to a colleague or a friend, it helps you get through the day. I can't ride a bike yet. Well, none of us were born riding bikes, right? We didn't come out of our parents able to ride a bike. That's a skill that we learn, and it's a staggered skill that's gathered over building up other skills over and over years. So it's a scaffolding piece. So you can't ride a bike yet, but if you practice, you will probably be able to. I can't drive a car yet, same idea. Krista, do you want to talk about your experiences with cars? I know you've had a checkered past.
Yes, actually I have. I just have to share quickly as I'm reading these short little, blurbs about like these one sentence things that I think about like a fight with my husband and it's like, I can't stand you yet.
Give it time.
But no, with driving, absolutely. I mean, I literally have had a full-blown 13-year phobia of driving on the highways, and complete avoidance was the only thing that eased my anxiety. And I mean, when I got on the highway, because of course I would expose myself and try it, and I'd get full-blown panic attack. And so how did I overcome that? Because today I drive to Moncton every day from Sackville back and forth, and it's me that's driving, and I do it, and it's actually finally I'm at that point where that transition time is. I look forward to the drive to work and I look forward to the drive home because it gives me that nice half-an-hour transition for myself to listen to music or self-reflect or just enjoy the sun through the windows in the car, whatever the case may be. But it wasn't that long ago, only a couple of years, where I was not there at all. And so instead of continuing to be afraid of that, I had to sort of reframe it, like you said earlier, Marie, and I had to ask myself, what are you afraid of? So I had, and so all of those questions I asked myself to work towards, and those very, very much baby steps to overcoming that, was I can't drive yet. I'm not ready to yet. And as soon as I put in that word yet, all of a sudden that possibility opened up for me. And as I said, today, here I am, like 110% phobia free. I do a mental health check when I'm in the car every now and then, and I say, scale of 1 to 10 for anxiety, what are you at right now? 1 being completely relaxed and 10 is a full-blown panic attack. And I now finally, it's literally a dream come true. I can say I'm at a 0 or a 1. So that's pretty powerful, just with thoughts alone, right? And how we can retrain our brain. So yet is a very powerful word.
Thank you for yet. And another example that we threw in was just, I can't read yet. I mean, we all see that that's a scaffolded skill that we learn over time. And so do we give like a 5-year-old a dictionary and expect them to read it? No, we start with level books where they're comfortable with. We model to them, we read to them, we get them to love storytelling. We build up that skill. So we make success attainable. We set expectations that we can actually reach, right? So we practice a growth mindset. So here we would encourage you to pick up and think about 2 other examples of a time when you yourself have used a growth mindset to accomplish something. So yeah, just take a minute, see if you can come up with 2 ways that you yourself, without even knowing it maybe, have kind of explored growth mindset and celebrated it and nailed it. So now we have, and I wish we could share those examples. I hope you find somebody to share them with. So now we have a little video explaining growth mindset as well. So I'm going to stop my video and we'll pop up the video itself.
Researcher and professor Carol Dweck uses the term mindset to describe the way people think about ability and talent. Dweck delineates between two different mindsets that exist on a continuum. The first is the fixed mindset, which suggests that your abilities are innate and unchangeable. The second is a growth mindset, which views it as something you can improve through practice. In a fixed mindset, you view failure as permanent, but with a growth mindset, you see failure as a chance to learn and even pivot. Those with a fixed mindset are more likely to view critical feedback as a personal attack, while those with a growth mindset will see it as a chance to improve, where they can develop new systems. With a fixed mindset, you're more likely to choose easier tasks and put in minimal effort. After all, if talent is fixed, why bother improving? Why even try? But with a growth mindset, you're more likely to embrace challenging tasks and work hard to improve. Those with a fixed mindset are likely to give up when they face an obstacle. Meanwhile, those with a growth mindset will view obstacles as a chance to experiment and solve problems. In a fixed mindset, the focus is on measurable accomplishments. But with a growth mindset, the focus is more on a journey of continual improvement. With a fixed mindset, you're less likely to take creative risks. But with a growth mindset, creative risks are simply a way to innovate and improve. Ultimately, your mindset influences everything from creative risk-taking to how you view feedback to whether or not you finish difficult tasks. And in the end, it's one of the greatest factors in determining whether or not you grow and improve in your abilities.
So that's sort of a nice summary of growth mindset and why it's important to incorporate it. So we're going to talk now about ways that we can nurture a growth mindset, but I bet you're already sort of starting to think about that. So what are some ways, maybe you're already doing it too, and in your life or in the lives of those around you, you could kind of celebrate and nudge each other towards having a growth mindset, kind of getting out of that fixed space.
So number one, first and foremost, is just to embrace imperfection. It's a tough one, don't get me wrong, especially if you have had a fixed mindset or set mindset for quite some time, and it's to embrace imperfection. That's a really, as I said earlier, a daunting task, right? But if you can, then you're going to set yourself up for that opportunity, those opportunities, that reception to feedback, that openness to possibilities. So as best you can embrace and understand, much like this pandemic, for example, we've all been through and have had challenges in some way, shape, or form. We're in it together. We all have imperfections, right? Even those that you see that you look up to so much and you think there's no way, like I'm never going to be anything like them, but they as well have imperfections. So anything you want to add to that one, Marie? Or
No, I think that's well said.
And number two, and I know we keep saying this, especially if you've seen the first one as well, but seeing challenges as opportunities. So the Resiliency Webinar and now this Growth Mindset Webinar is just, really changing the negative intonation that the word challenge tends to bring to our mind and seeing it as a positive, word in the sense that it opens opportunities for us. This is an important one. Being mindful, being careful, being just of how you speak to yourself. Speak to yourself with intent. That's, I guess, the best tip I can give you regarding that, because I think you by now at least have had some time to think about how powerful thoughts can be. And we talk about this brain retraining and all this stuff. Well, I mean, when we speak down to ourselves and berate ourselves and put ourselves down and call ourselves a loser or failure, or I'm never going to be able to do that, well, then you're setting yourself up to be able to achieve just that. It's important to be mindful in how you speak to yourself. And really, if it's something as simple as tossing in that word yet with those negative thoughts that you might catch yourself having, that could be a really powerful transition into a growth mindset that you may find yourself, hopefully learning to practice more and more.
Mm-hmm. I think that saying too of like, oh, sorry. Usually we share a screen, so this is weird for us.
I know.
That little saying about like speak to yourself the way that you would to someone you love, like a friend or a parent, is super cheesy, but can be really like a lovely framework to kind of ground yourself in when you think of the way that you talk to yourself. So sometimes we are our own worst enemy. We're our own harshest critic. And we set expectations for ourselves that are just not fair and just not realistic. And we forget to celebrate how awesome we are. So I really think that's a go-to for me. And I don't usually say my mom. Would I say that to my mom? Would I talk to my mom that same way? No. So I need to practice exactly loving myself the way that I love those who I care deeply for, right? So in the end, you're stuck with yourself daily for the rest of your life, right? So you really need to figure out how to be that person who you love the most too.
Yeah. And number 4, so when we talk about growth mindset and how do I get a growth mindset, or how do I practice having more of a growth mindset, is learning to trust yourself. That's an important one too. And part of that is learning to get to know yourself too. Sometimes we build walls up, not only around other people in our world, but around ourselves. We shut the door to getting to know ourselves because we've put ourselves down for so long. So if you're willing to embrace imperfection, forgive yourself for the hurtful things you've said to yourself in the past, and be willing to move forward. Part of that is learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your judgment, your intuition, that gut feeling. Really listen to it. Listen to your body. What is it telling you? Don't think it's nothing, or, oh, I'm just weak, or I'm just, whatever. Like, learn to really learning. When you know yourself, you'll feel more confident in learning to trust yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. That makes me think, I was working with a student one time and we were talking about growth mindsets, and they were saying like, oh, I'm so terrible. I don't even have a growth mindset. Like, I've got the worst fixed mindset. Like, they were fixating on their fixed mindset. It was the cutest little loophole in the way that you need to trust yourself, right? You got to trust yourself to be able to grow and learn and change, right? So be kind to yourself. If you're struggling to have a growth mindset, you are not alone. That's the process. It's messy. Trust it.
I do want to make mention too that these I think there's 15, if I'm not mistaken, of ways to kind of grow your mindset, if you will. But I just want to make note too that while it's not on these slides, this is taken from Psychology Today. These 15 from an article that I found, which is it is posted in our references at the end. I just didn't put it on the slides because I didn't want to take away the message that we were trying to get you to hear. So just so that that's where we kind of got that list from.
Thanks, Krista.
Yeah.
So the 5th one is, so be your true self. So I think we've talked about this in different ways indirectly all along, but figure out who you are, right? And advocate for that person and celebrate that person. And if others around you are doing different things and acting different way, power to them, but you need to do you, right? So trust that, and trust that process of figuring out who your true self is. And if you're not quite sure yet, well, I'll give you a hint. None of us are really sure exactly who we are, but that is part of it, right? Just trusting that messy piece of it. Anything to add for that one, Krista?
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay. So then 6 would be to have purpose and set goals. And we talked about this in the resiliency one too. So goals can be short-term, they can be long-term, they can be middle-term, they can be whatever they need to be. But it's really important to wake up with purpose. It's really important to wake up with commitment and drive and hope. And so it can be really small, like today I will floss my teeth. And I say that honestly because I'm not the most committed flosser, right? So that's a goal that I'm working on. But I also have other long-term goals, right? So you have to have little ones. When we think pandemic too, we talked about this in the last webinar too, like sometimes we need to be a little bit soft with ourselves. these days. We're all kind of going through trauma and crisis. We all need to be extra mindful and extra kind. So some days, honestly, your goals could be get out of your pajamas, right? Or they could be to call someone and tell them that you love them. Your goals don't have to be massive, right? But in that moment, they are massive on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So 7 would be appreciate your strength. So we've talked about this too, kind of celebrating who you are. And sometimes we just kind of assume that, oh, everybody can do this. But no, not everybody can do this. Not everybody has this talent and this strength. And, you know, take a moment to really appreciate who you are, where you come from, the resiliency that you've shown to get you there, and what makes you a strong, powerful person, right? And maybe you're not getting that message from others around you, but you still need to send that message to yourself, right? So even in the wackiness all around you, you still need to appreciate your strength, even if they're not being like pointed out and highlighted by others. In the end, you are your audience, right? You are your own audience, so you need to be your own cheerleader.
And Marie, I want to mention too for number 7, appreciating your strengths is also acknowledging them. Like at the very beginning, when we did the transition into the sort of get into webinar mode, one of the things was the 10 ways you rock. And I don't know about you, but that almost triggered a little bit of anxiety for me because I was like, 10 ways I rock. I don't know, I feel weird. 10 ways I rock, right? Like A, I can't think of 10 ways that I rock. And B, you know, like, does anybody, like, I don't want people to think that I'm tooting my own horn, but I think there is some real empowerment there to acknowledge that, yes, you have strengths. Of course you have strengths. Just as
I'm going to counsel you, Krista, if you are struggling to come up with 10 ways that you rock, you need to spend some time on that, right? You need to make a list of 10 ways that you rock, and then you need to post it like in your bathroom mirror. Treat it like a positive affirmation. So start your day reading your list. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. Fair enough. So,
but you're right. It's so funny. Like, and even as counselors, obviously that's something that Krista and I struggle with too. It is, for whatever reason, society encourages us, and maybe particularly as women, I'm not sure if there's truth to that, but that's kind of where I'm going emotionally right now. Right? To be humble, to be shy, to not toot our own horns, and to view celebrating ourselves as tooting our own horns. Yeah. We maybe need to rethink if that's a fair baseline for how we treat ourselves.
Yeah, no, good point.
Maybe that's the next webinar.
Yeah.
Okay, so 8, be open to others' suggestions. Take it away, Krista.
Yeah, which we've talked about. So it's that idea of having a growth mindset. We're not only more open to other suggestions, but we're also open to giving those suggestions to others as well. Of course, and again, it's with the intention, right? So that good intention behind our words.
So 9, enjoy the process, right? Yes. And having a growth mindset is like at its very nature, acknowledging that it is a process, right? That we're all in the middle of this like weird binary between the two, and we're all trying to work towards growth, and it's such a challenge. And so, yeah, enjoy that messiness, celebrate it, have a sense of humor about it, like learn that reframing is like an act of self-love, right? So enjoy it, yeah. And definitely, I think humor is a big one for that. Like, I need to be able to laugh at my failures. I need to be able to giggle, or else it's too solid, right? So yeah, find tips and tricks like that, like laughter or whatever works for you, so that you can enjoy the process. Right?
I find myself sometimes on those days when I'm trying to listen to myself, and it's in particular myself is telling me to be gentle. So that might look like laying on the couch and binging Netflix or whatever the case may be. And I find that then I feel like I'm not being productive. But you know what? When you say that, it makes me think of enjoying the process, that's all part of the process of life, isn't it? Enjoying life does mean sometimes binge watching Netflix on the couch, if that's what that day looks like for you, and that's productive. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes, like, and I guess I'm sending this to some of those out there that might fall under that overachiever mode, or the you know, the parent that has so many hats on in the run of the day, they don't know what the word relaxation looks like if they tried. Like, enjoy the process. If you have a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon where you're able to take it off, and yes, there's laundry to do, and yes, there's dishes to do, and meals to plan, and this and that, but if it's sunny out, then maybe you're going to close that door and you're going to enjoy the process. And part of that process is finding balance in life. And guess what? The laundry's still going to be there to do, the dishes are still going to be there to do. But that time with your child or that book that you wanted to really get into, that's not always going to be there, right? So
that's fair. Thanks, Krista. So the 10th one is learn from others' mistakes. So I think that's just the idea that you don't have to put yourself out there and make every single disastrous mistake imaginable. You can read the narratives of those around you. You can learn from shared experiences. You can share, right? And so be open to learning from the experiences of others and incorporate them into your own kind of self-care practice that week. And so yet, do we even need to talk more about yet?
No, it's a keyword, right? Number 12 I like though is this idea of taking risks in the company of others. Ooh, that's scary, because especially when I think of students in the school setting, you know, geez, the last thing somebody wants to do is center themselves out of, you know, and call themselves out in any way, shape, or form that might like lead people to make fun or poke fun at them. And of course, that taking risks in the company of others, it does lead to potential mistakes or errors being made. But like you mentioned, learning to laugh at yourself and not take yourself so seriously can be really helpful too in those moments, right?
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So it's a tough one to practice, but it's a goodie.
And also the nice kind of flip side to that is it does actively make you realize that everybody's in this process together. Everybody's making mistakes alongside you, right? So if you can see the others around you kind of struggle with putting themselves out there and you do it as a team, it can be like really kind of normalizing, which is awesome.
Well, and it's an inspiration to others too, right?
Yeah.
Being an inspiration to others.
Yeah, you're kind of like community modeling, right?
Yeah, like when I watch some of those shows, like let's say American Idol or something like that, and someone gets on and they share a story of some kind of, you know, trauma maybe they've experienced, like that is an inspiration to some people who are also struggling with that and seeing like, look where I am today. I did this. You know, so I think that's really something worth mentioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, learn from the vulnerability and challenges of others for sure. So let's go to 13. So be realistic when you're learning a new skill. So again, like we've talked about, you can't expect yourself to be like instantly and immediately 100% successful. That doesn't really happen. And if it does, it's typically a fluke. And maybe there's a lot of learned behavior before that allowed that success to happen that maybe you're not fully aware of if you're just saying that it's a one-time success, right? So when you're learning a new skill, set yourself up with like chunked goals. So one little step at a time, acknowledging failure, acknowledging success, like celebrating that the path towards learning a new skill is not linear, right? It's lots of ups and downs. It's all over the place. It's plan B's and C's and D's and all over it. So yeah, just be realistic and careful with the expectations that you set for yourself.
Yep.
Maybe the skill that you learn through that is to be an open-minded skill learner, right? So maybe there's other skills you can pick up along the way too.
For sure. And 14, you know, pace yourself. It goes along with the enjoying the process, enjoying the ride, right? So especially if you're learning a new skill, I mean, I think of a knitting group that I was in, and I'd be sitting there knitting my dishcloth, and I would look around and see people knitting, you know, Afghans or socks, which are hard to knit. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, all these elaborate patterns, and I can't believe it. Oh, and they change colors, and they know how to fix their own mistakes when they make a knitting error or whatever. But you know what? I was new and I was learning and I was enjoying myself. And so that was okay that my project was a dishcloth. And I felt proud of myself when I finished it. So it is about pacing yourself. And had I continued to hone that skill, I didn't as knitting, but I'm sure I could have been one of those people that could carry on a conversation while not looking at my knitting needles and, you know, be super fast at knitting. But it just takes practice and you know, as I said, pace yourself to get there, right?
I think, and part of pacing yourself too is like, if you start the process in knitting, for example, I've tried to be a knitter many times in life. I'm just not a knitter.
Yeah.
Okay. right?
Definitely, yeah.
It's okay to not just reframe, but like redirect. That's okay.
Yeah.
So the final one would be own your attitude, right? So growth mindset is yours to welcome. It's yours to accept. So own it, right? Own who you are. Own who you are within the process of discovering a growth mindset. Own your personality. Own all of your lovely flaws. Just kind of own yourself.
Definitely.
All right, so we have another little video. So I will take our video off here so you can check out this little YouTube video.
Chapter 1. Mojo discovers a secret about his brain. A secret that will change the way he looks at the world forever. Our story begins with Mojo, a friendly monster who loved school, especially math. Until one day, when something terrible happened. The math problems got harder. Nothing made sense anymore. Mojo had a devastating thought. He just wasn't smart enough for school. It seemed the only reasonable thing to do was pack his things and leave forever. Just then, he heard his friend Katie laughing. "Mojo, you can't just give up," she said. "I have no choice, Katie," said Mojo. "You're either born smart or you're not. And I realize today that I'm not." "Mojo, that's not how it works," said Katie. "Anyone can be smart. You just have to work at it." "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," said Mojo. "It's not ridiculous, it's science," said Katie. "Neuroscientists studied the brain for years and discovered an incredible secret, that your brain is like a muscle. When you try challenging things, like those hard math problems, you're giving your brain the exercise it needs to get stronger, which makes you smarter." "Ooh, is that really true?" said Mojo. "Of course," said Katie. "It's like how when you were a baby, you didn't know how to talk. But you kept trying, exercising your brain, until one day you could." Mojo couldn't believe what he was hearing. If your brain was really like a muscle, did that mean anyone could become smarter? Even him? He turned to ask Katie, but just then, she had to be off to her next class. But maybe you can answer Mojo's question. What do you think? Can Mojo become smarter? What about you? Now that's an interesting question indeed.
So the reason that I like that video, and I use it often with children and youth in the school system and with clients, is because it's very kid friendly, right? And it leaves it on kind of a, what would you do? So you really watch that video as a child and then have to figure out how you connect with it, right? So what are your thoughts, right? Can they learn and grow? So let's finish up then with some growth mindset reflection. So it's kind of unfair to throw all this information at you and then just shut it down. So we always like to finish our webinars with a few kind of intentional questions to get you thinking about what to do with what we've shared and what we've talked about. So the emphasis when you go to any kind of webinar, workshop, or presentation is to always walk away with one thing that you've learned. So what's the one thing that you learned today? And then what's one action item that you can take? So now that you know this one thing, or you've had these different experiences, or you've reframed your thinking about growth mindset in this way, what are you going to do with it? Because when you know better, you do better. So what's the do part for you? What are you going to do with all of this thought about growth mindset? And then who is one person that you will talk to about growth mindset in youth and children? So now that you know about why growth mindset is really important when we're talking specifically to youth and children, but also adults. Who could you share that with? Like, who do you think might run with that information, or who do you think would be cool to have a conversation with about it, to get you thinking in a different way, to want to share your thoughts? Who is that one kind of go-to person that you want to talk about this? And then how are you then in turn, the last question, how are you going to strengthen and model your own growth mindset? So now that you know that it's growth mindset is really empowering, that it's a skill, that it's an outlook that you can practice for lifelong, what are you going to do to strengthen that? And what are you going to do to model it for those around you? Because there's a piece of self-care with growth mindset, but there's also a piece of community care. So we can hold each other up to these like higher growth mindset expectations by just simply modeling and talking with one another. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to CMHA NB. So typically when we do a webinar, there's a Q&A piece at the end, but this is a pre-recorded one because we were having trouble. So that doesn't mean you can't still have a conversation with us. So reach out to Canadian Mental Health of New Brunswick, or you can contact Krista and I at our website, iriscounseling.ca. Counseling has 2 L's, and there are lots of email addresses and that sort of thing. So we can continue this chat if you want to. And then as we started with the transition, Krista and I thought that it would be really important to kind of finish with the transition too. So this is a nice one. It helps with emotional regulation, and it's lovely because it doesn't cost anything. I'm big on no cost, and there's like a physical component to it as well as a mental component to it. And the only tool that you need are your 2 hands. So it's called 5-finger breathing. So if you can count to 5, if you can breathe, and if you have 2 hands, you're good to go. So you're basically using a pointer finger and starting at the base of your thumb, and you're going up and pausing and down, and then up and pausing and down. And for each of those movements, so the up, you're counting to 5 quietly, and then you're pausing for 5, and then you're going down for 5. So everything is within 5s using your pointer and then your hand. So what you're going to do is you're going to inhale for 5, then hold for 5, and then exhale for 5. Inhale for 5, hold for 5, exhale for 5. Okay, so we'll do that together. I'll model it for you. Krista will do it at the same time. And let's try it together. And the sweetest thing about this is, like, if you're stuck in a car in traffic, you can do this. If you're having a tough moment with your friend or your boss or your boyfriend or anybody, you can do this, right? If your children are driving you bonkers, you can do this. If your dog just peed on your kitchen floor and you're going to lose your mind, which happened to me yesterday, you can do this, right? Like, there's lots of opportunities where you already just have the tool right there. Okay. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the more natural it becomes. So are you ready, Krista? Mm-hmm. Let's do it. Okay. So inhale. So we're inhaling with our nose and holding, and exhaling with our mouth. Aiming for 5. And I count, but then I can't breathe. So do you see how that simple little touch is also calming too, as you're doing the breathing, and then you're doing the counting with your mind? So you're kind of activating your body and your mind at the same time. It's a lovely little transitional kind of grounding activity. You like that one too, Krista? Don't you do that one sometimes?
I use that one a lot. Actually, when I talked earlier about the driving, that was one of my strategies I used to send a message to my brain that the coast is clear and all is good, and I would just breathe in for 5, hold for 5, and then breathe out for 5. Yeah, and I still do that today.
It's funny, like, I actually feel better right now just doing that.
I know.
Like, instantly activating. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll finish with a thank you, a merci, a wolalin, and yeah, feel free to check out our other one on resiliency, and we hope that you found something useful and something to think about from this one on growth mindset for children and youth. And thanks to Canadian Mental Health of New Brunswick for inviting us and making us feel so welcome as we do these little partnership workshops together. Do you have anything to add, Krista?
Yes, and thanks for everyone for taking the time to view our video and come out to join the webinar. We really appreciate that. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much. So thank you, merci, Alan. Everybody go practice a growth mindset.
Take care, everyone.